Yes, hello everyone. Welcome to WD18, the Watford fan channel. Welcome to another match review. It is Watford versus Bournemouth at the Vitality Stadium this Saturday in the early kick-off. A big game. We've got a lot to cover in today's show. Of course, we're joined by, first off, Sam. How you doing, mate, first of all?
I'm all good today. It's the weather's been incredible, so that kind of lifts my mood a bit as well. So yeah, I'm really
I saw
excited for
you.
the game
I saw
tomorrow.
you out in the sun thinking about the away days at the Vitality.
Do you know what though? Like tomorrow is ideal Bournemouth away weather. You know, it gets you thinking about that day in 2017 where we won 2-0, the sun was out, loads of beers, and it was fantastic. What a day out.
What a day. We're going to be
Yeah.
looking ahead to tomorrow's game. Elliot as well. Elliot, how you doing, mate?
I'm good, thanks. Yeah, loving the new dramatic entrance. I think it's really cool.
More dynamic.
I agree with Sam on the weather front, and yeah, it's an interesting thought. I'm trying to think: has there ever been bad weather, particularly in the Premier League for Bournemouth away? I know in the Championship there were some odd ones before.
I know that was one. Jacob, it was freezing that night. Do you know when we went to, I think it must have been Boxing Day, we went to Bournemouth McDonald's beforehand. And it was, that was the night we drew 3-3 and King Ken scored his first goal for Watford. That night was freezing. That's all I remember.
That was freezing. Really. Me and Sam tucked into a cheeky Mackey's pre-match, and that was like, I thought that was going to be the highlight of the day, but then Ken Sever decided to absolutely rip it up. Absolutely
mental game. That was like 3-3 after half an hour as well. It was.
Yeah, he scored his first goal, didn't he, Ken?
Yeah,
I tell you what.
Exactly.
So he scored in the last game. We'll first off touch on Blackburn. We've got a packed show today, guys. We're going to be talking about Watford's recent form, Blackburn last game. We've got a few clips from today's press conference. Elliot has managed to sort out some of the clips we're going to be showing on screen with William Troost-Ekong, some really interesting stuff from him. And then we're going to be crossing to Sam Davis from the Back of the Net Bournemouth podcast and YouTube channel to get the insight on Bournemouth at the moment. They've had some interesting times with they were set to bring in an external appointment. They continue with Jonathan Woodgate. We're going to be talking about the situation there. It seems they're a little bit out of form considering the start of the season they made. So we're going to be talking to him about that as well. We're going to cross over to Sam first. Sam, Blackburn 3-2 win at Ewood Park. Can you pinpoint what pleased you the most about that victory and performance by Watford?
It was in terms of an away performance. I think we looked much more dangerous than we have in other games this season. It looked like at times whenever we went forward, it looked like we'd score, and you know every single player moving forward was doing their kind of little bit. And in the last 10 minutes, particularly, I thought everyone kind of showed that certain bit of drive and desire that we kind of lacked at the start of the season. So I think for me at the moment, the thing that impressed me most is we're really showing our promotion credentials, and at this stage in the season, that's what you really need.
Sam, Elliot, for you, is it the same thing with that performance? It was a gritty performance, despite being a 3-2 game. It was very end to end, but I think the manner in which you won it was really pleasing. And I guess it wasn't going to be an absolutely perfect performance, but we got out there with a win and scored 3 goals from open play, which is huge.
Yeah, on similar lines to Sam, I think the fact that we performed that well attacking wise on a pitch so poor is a testament to how well we played. And I think we often made it look like we were playing at Vicarage Road with the way that we played the ball sometimes on the ground. There were some shaky moments here and there with the passing, but for the most part, we looked like it didn't really affect us. And we sort of used it to our advantage at times and didn't let it phase us, which was a difficult thing to do on a pitch like that. And I think we've done that now a couple of times in this good run of games. We did it against Preston as well, where we've basically let our quality shine through despite the pitch, and the threat attacking wise was clear throughout, and we always looked like scoring in every attack. And then defensively we were a little shaky at times, but for the most part we kept out the threat as well, because they're a good attacking side, Blackburn. They've scored more than Watford I think over the course of the season, so I think we did well to nullify it to some extent despite a couple of moments here and there. So all round it was a very good performance.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think actually, Sam, we'll touch on those shaky moments. What aspects of our last game do we need to improve on? Is it purely just individual mistakes, or is it collectively? I think defensively, as Elliot mentioned, there was a couple of moments where we did look a little bit shaky.
Yeah, I think the main thing has to be individual errors. I think we kind of need to remain focused as a whole at the same time as well, because I kind of feel like that defensive lapse at the end that made it 3-2, where Ben Wilmot lost his man, perhaps was getting a bit complacent, thinking we'd won the game. I'm not 100% sure, but I think that kind of leads on to the fact that we need to be killing off these games. I know 3-1 is relatively comfortable, but we can't be allowing teams back into these games? And if so, we have to, try and get a more comfortable margin back. So for me, it's just generally about, making sure that we stay comfortable in games and don't let teams kind of get back into it.
Is it the same for you, Elliot, about killing games? Because when Sema scored that third goal, I have to admit, I was relieved. I was thinking, right, we got it wrapped up. And whether the players thought that as well, there might have been a little bit of complacency sneaking in. And then even at the end, we mentioned about Daniel Backman pulling off a really good save. So is it just about putting teams away when we're on top?
Yeah, I think it is, but I think they recognise that as well, and I think they've acknowledged where the problems were from last game. I know we'll talk about it in a bit, and we'll show the clips from earlier, but William Troost-Ekong even said today in his press conference that he thought that was probably his worst game in a Watford shirt, and I think they all recognise where the defensive lapses were, and maybe where they let a player through, or they didn't play the right pass. So I think all of the problems that were found in that game will be fixed, and they were one-offs. Well, I hope so anyway. And
fingers crossed.
It is just about getting rid of those little issues that did exist against Blackburn. But to the same extent, we did make up for it in our attacking play. And I don't know if necessarily it's as simple as sacrificing how we played defensively to make up for the attacking, because I don't think they're necessarily linked. But defensively, there were definitely rooms for improvement. And I think the club recognised that. And I think the players are going to work on that. And they probably have done already.
That's a really interesting point Elliot makes, Sam, about the balance of this Watford team. Do you think we've kind of struck the balance? I know we've won the last 4 games, but do you think when you watch this Watford side that there is a nice balance in this team at the moment?
Yeah, I think everywhere on the pitch, kind of players now establishing connections with each other, and I think players being played in the right positions now as well. I think we mentioned the phrase quite a lot: square pegs in round holes, and that's not the case anymore. I think everyone's kind of fitting together perfectly, getting used to playing with each other now as well, because I've kind of, even if it's different personnel, I think we've kind of got a good core now, and we can kind of work around that. So I do think that we have to kind of keep on adopting this shape for the rest of the season if we do stand a chance still of going up automatically.
Yeah, it's really interesting to see how it's changed with Watford at the moment. And we'll talk, as Elliot mentioned, William Troost-Ekong touched on that turning point in the season, and we'll save that for a little bit later. But just going back onto tomorrow, Elliot, how do we beat Bournemouth? Simply, what do we need to do, and what do we need to implement going into tomorrow's game to get all 3 points?
Cisco Munoz is scout back again. Then how do we beat Bournemouth?
How do we do it? Cisco scout.
I wish I knew. I wish I knew the exact formula for it, but
Is it keep it the same?
I think it is more of the same. I think it's using the strengths that we've got. If we can show them and if we can utilize them tomorrow, I don't think we'll have a problem, to be honest. I don't think that's necessarily underestimating Bournemouth. I just think that it's maybe I think it's just a testament to how Watford are at the moment. I think we're very competitive. I think we can really beat any team in the league when we're at the highest standard that we are. Not all the time, but recently we've been towards that higher standard. And I think if we just play our way, if we control that midfield, because they're in poor form, not necessarily the whole team, because I think there are some players in there that are playing quite well, but Bournemouth midfield in particular is really on a dry spell. They're not doing particularly well. And I'm sure we'll touch on that a little later, but I think utilising the 3-man midfield that we've got and their confidence is obviously sky high at the moment. And then having Ismail Assar running at Diego Rico, who I think is a good player, but is also in very poor form at the moment. And Ismail Assar can cause him a lot of problems. I don't think we should necessarily put it down to one individual on either side and say, look, just pass it to Sarr. But using the width that Watford have and utilising playing it out wide and maybe putting crosses in or something like that, I think that can work. I think we can use that to our advantage. So I think playing our way, but also tapping into where there are little weaknesses in Bournemouth's team, I think that'll be the most effective way to grind out a victory, because I don't think it will be easy. I don't think we'll smash them 4-0 or 5-0.
Yeah, I think for me, I just kind of, just to kind of echo what Elliot said, I think we've got to the point now where we found kind of our winning formula, and it's about focusing on how we play rather than worrying about the opposition, if you know what I mean. Because of the personnel that we have and the way that we can kind of, dominate teams in terms of possession, in terms of chances created, I think it's about focusing on how we play, and if we turn up, we beat teams in this league. So for me, now it's about less worrying about the opposition and making sure that we turn up.
Well, Frankie echoes that in the comment section, Sam. What do you make of that comment? Bournemouth will change for us, so we just have to play our own game and we will win.
Yeah, exactly. Because Bournemouth now, if they carry on playing like they have recently, they are, we could blow them away if we carry on the way we're playing as well. So they're going to have to adapt to kind of stop us playing our way, and they have to change the way that they play. But because of the form we're in, we can carry on how we're kind of going, if that makes sense. So it's really important that we do that. And I know, Elliot, you mentioned Sarr against Rico, and I just had flashbacks there to Richarlison against, was it Adam Smith? Back in 2017, and if we can kind of replicate that performance tomorrow, then it should be a comfortable win.
You mentioned,
I'll just say a comfortable win. It won't be comfortable. It'll be a really difficult game tomorrow. I'm actually quite nervous for it.
Yeah, it feels like we'll touch on whether it is a defining moment in our season. We mention it pretty much every match preview, but it is a massive game, a really big game. Sam, you mentioned changes. What changes, if any, would you make to this Watford team? Does fatigue come into play at this point?
Yeah, fatigue kind of does have to be recognised. I think without getting too complacent, I'd much rather rest players midweek against Wycombe at home than tomorrow. So perhaps that's something that Xisco's got in the back of his mind. I think the main one for me, I want to see Nathaniel Chalobah come back in for Dan Gosling. I know, Jacob, we said on the phone yesterday that perhaps Gosling might be put in there just because he knows Bournemouth and how they play, but I think perhaps he's good impact sub to bring off the bench. And even though we've still got him in the squad, I think that we'll be able to utilise him like that. So I'd bring in Nathaniel Chalobah. I'd probably take out Troost-Ekong. I'm not sure if that's an unpopular opinion, but that's definitely one to keep an eye out for.
Elliot, I'll cross over to you. Would you agree with those changes that Sam suggested?
I wouldn't be disappointed if those were made. I think, Chalobah, if he is fit and well and ready to play 90 minutes or 70 minutes or whatever will happen, I would start him because I think he just gives a little bit more balance to that midfield. But it's minor. Like if Dan Gosling did start, I wouldn't complain. And also there is the benefit of him knowing Bournemouth very well. He was only there a month ago, so it's very recent that he was at the club. So I wouldn't really complain. I guess it's also fitness. If someone isn't fit for the game or someone has played for a long time, played multiple games back to back, like Kiko Femenia, then ultimately I wouldn't really complain if Jeremy Ngakia was to come in. I'd like to see Philip Zinkernagel start if Ken Sema is tired, because he's looked a little leggy here and there. And with the two centre-backs, I think we're quite blessed with the depth that we have, that I wouldn't really complain whichever centre-back pairing we have, as long as Francisco Sierralta is in there. I think if Ben Wilmot starts, I'd be happy with it. I think if Craig Cathcart was in there, I wouldn't really complain. And if Troost-Ekong kept his spot, then I don't think I'd be complaining either, because there was a lot that he referenced today where he said that he'd been looking at the analysis. He looked at his pass completion and he recognised that wasn't high enough. And he said that he's working on that and he will change that. So I think there's a recognition of maybe the mistakes that were made in midweek, and I trust him to turn it around and put in a good performance if he does start tomorrow.
That is a lovely... Elliot, you know what? You're getting brilliant this, mate. This is a lovely segue to the clips from William Troost-Ekong. Elliot spoke to him today at the press conference. We've got a few clips here, and the first one is William on the dressing room leaders in the Watford squad. Here he is.
A manager who is very positive, but at the end of the day, we need to do our bit as well to help him. And I think it has a lot more power when you have a culture and a team where you have different people taking responsibility. And just to emphasise that, everyone knows Troy is our captain, and I think he, within our change room, he probably has the final say. But everyone besides that, stepping up to take responsibility, and all the people that you've mentioned, including myself, feel responsibility as well to be vocal and just to be honest with each other and question each other as well if we don't believe that this the right thing's being done. And at the same time, we all make mistakes, and that's the one thing that we said we weren't gonna put extra weight on, but as long as the intentions are right, and I feel like now we have all the right intentions and everyone's trying to do the right thing, that's all you can ask from each other.
So that was the first clip, Elliot. What did you make of William Troost-Ekong's answer for that one in terms of dressing room leaders? I guess it's encouraging, actually, that Xisco's got a support system in this Watford squad that is really strong. Yeah,
and there's the recognition of perhaps things not being good enough before this little run of wins that we've gone on, that things weren't good enough and we need to change it and we need to pick ourselves up. There was sort of like a recognition from the players that we weren't in a good spot, and that despite all of Xisco's work, because there was a lot of emphasis on Xisco being the one that was maybe trying to encouraged the squad to do a bit more. So there was the recognition that things aren't good enough. And now we've seen that things have changed, and we've seen a corner being turned, basically. So I think it's really encouraging. There are a lot of leaders in that team, and that's why I asked the question, because he's the captain of Nigeria, and he's not captain or vice captain. So you can tell that there are a lot of leaders there. There's Tom Cleverley and there's Craig Cathcart, and then you've got obviously Troy Deeney, who is leading from the sidelines as well, who he mentions quite a lot, and he says is still doing a lot of work in influencing the energy and the passion in the team. So I think it's a really positive mix that we've got of youth and experience, and it's got to be a positive influence on the likes of João Pedro and Ismail Assar and a couple of others who are still young players, very talented, and
Cisco
lots
too.
of room to improve.
Cisco as well.
Yeah, and Cisco too, of course.
You
And
need
moving-
that as a young manager. I think it's really important that perhaps not the fact that he doesn't, perhaps gain the respect straight away. You kind of need those leaders in the dressing room, because it's probably difficult at times for him to kind of, assert his authority on this squad. That's nothing against Cisco. It's just because it's the nature of where he's come from to Watford. So it's really important, really encouraging to hear that there's so many people kind of who have each other's back in the dressing room at the moment.
Exactly that, mate. Moving on to another clip from the press conference. William Schustergong spoke about how the team had to pick themselves up after the Coventry defeat.
Rating game was the Coventry game, just because I felt we could do so much more as a team, and I feel everyone felt the same way. And even though it was a draw in the end, it felt like a loss. And I think that then came a moment where we all said, okay, to each other, we need to continue what we were doing before that, because I don't think before that we were playing bad. I think when Cisco came in, he gave our team a much more positive approach. We started playing higher up the field, and his way of explaining it was that you're going to go through some growing pains, and you're going to being out of your comfort zone. There's going to be moments where things are not going to be working well, but you have to keep a cool head and just believe in what we're doing and continue. So I think all of us did, and the main thing was that we could just add with a positive mentality, and everyone really believing in what we're doing, and not be afraid to make mistakes.
My apologies. It did feel like a defeat at Coventry away. It was a draw, 0-0, as William touches on in there. And he just wrapped up the press conference with Elliot's questions. Finally, with Watford winning 4 on the bounce at the moment, we're in great form. Elliot asked William about the team's improvement in form recently.
Everyone, I think the thing that we have now is that everyone is contributing to the wins and to the games. And we're just not as reliant on individual brilliance to open up a game, and I feel like everyone is really pulling their weight. But it has helped to put some players in their preferred position, and I think the main thing is just that we've had some more license to play.
Really interesting stuff from William there, and it segues on to Bournemouth on Saturday. Whether he starts or not is definitely going to be up for contention. It's a great point to bring in Sam Davis from the Back of the Net podcast. Make sure you go and check them out on YouTube and their podcast as well, which is brilliant. Honestly, I think one of the best fan channels out there. I'm not just saying it because you're on here, Sam, but honestly, it's really, really good stuff. And we've always said this, Sam, about the parallels between Watford and Bournemouth. But recently, in the last few games, it seems to be a bit of a gap emerging. Does it feel like that as a Bournemouth fan as well?
Mate, we're crap. we're so crap at the moment.
I love to hear that, particularly Bournemouth. I love to hear that.
There's always been these parallels, you're right. And throughout the sort of seasons, we've always been in the same division. We seem to be relentlessly getting draws with each other, and we were always there or thereabouts in the league. And this season, it started off like maybe we might be top dogs this season, but we've dropped like a stone. And a lot of Bournemouth fans are very unhappy with what they're seeing on the pitch at the moment, and very jealous at what teams like Norwich, Brentford, Swansea, even Cardiff putting runs together, and of course Watford, who seem to be doing really well. So whilst usually we go into a game against Watford feeling all right, most of us are crapping ourselves tomorrow, wondering what on earth we're going to expect. Yeah,
really blind.
Yeah.
Is that it? What's gone wrong recently? Because I mentioned at the top of the show, I mean, the start of the season was pretty good from Bournemouth, but there's been a massive drop off recently. Do you think the managerial uncertainties played a part in that?
100%. Yeah, in my opinion, Eddie Howe carried the club for so long, And I know that some people call him Eddie Fraud and all this. Without him, there would be no way that we would be a Premier League side. Of course, we had the investment. He spent it on the whole pretty wisely, but I think he carried the careers of so many people behind the scenes, and that includes the hierarchy of the club as well. Now, if you want to see a club in disarray, I mean, I know that you obviously have lots of managerial appointments and all that kind of stuff, but the thing is, you've got a system, and it sort of tends to work, whereas our administration, I think, has not had anything to do for the past 8 or 9 years. They've put their feet up and they've just let one man, he did everything, like, pretty much. And he left, of course. For what reason, we still don't know. Jason Tindall took over. He was underqualified, but I suppose it was fair that he had a crack at the whip. He's been at the club for so long. Why not? I think the board maybe thought the squad of players that we've got are so good that it doesn't really matter who's in charge, but ultimately it does. And then we have Jason Tindall being released, and then murmurings of like Thierry Henry, David Wagner, John Terry, Frank Lampard, all these different names, none of what, like world-class CVs is what the club said. And then we go with the guy that we had in caretaker charge originally, and they said because he's the best candidate for the job. Okay, so what contract are you giving him? 2 years, 3 years, 15 games? What's that all about? There's a lot of questions that are being unanswered, and I think the players, they're not pulling their weight, but they're obviously, to me, they're probably frustrated at the lack of direction actually above them as well. So it's not great.
Yeah, it's just a really intriguing situation from the outside. But from watching your content, I think the big thing that stood out for me, Sam, was I read the club statement that Bournemouth put out, and it was they were going to make an external appointment. Spent 3 weeks, as you mentioned, looking for the likes of. It seemed like Henry was the front runner. You had Vieira mentioned, as you mentioned as well. David Wagner, all relatively big names. But you've then opted for Jonathan Woodgate. Are you surprised that you didn't maybe just stick it out with Jason to the end of the season?
We might as well have. And if the board, like many fans almost think the board should have stuck to their convictions and just saw the season out. Look, this is nothing against Woodgate, by the way. I know he's not got the best managerial record in previous jobs or whatever, but he's carried himself very well in the media, and a lot of fans appreciate the kind of style that he's got. And at the end of the day, when he was caretaker manager, he didn't know how many games he's got. So you don't go in as a caretaker and try to rip up the whole philosophy of what we had before, because you don't know how many games it is, before you're going to be replaced. Now he's been given 15 games, and I still don't think that's enough. Given all the recovery time, we're playing 2 games a week. He probably doesn't actually spend that long trying to deploy what he wants to. So, I think all we've done is just extended the interview process basically, and we'll probably start afresh, probably as a championship side next season, lose all our best players, and probably go into the season like we used to feel like we don't know what's going to happen here. This is one of the first seasons in a long time where fans have actually had expectations, but this season, next season, there will be none.
Is there kind of an internal sense that this season's kind of been written off now then, in terms of the Woodgate appointment? Perhaps you're, going for a cheap option now and then going again next season.
That's what it seems to be from the board's perspective. I mean, because otherwise you'd be going with the manager and giving them a longer contract, but it almost seems to be that. So they've just gone for the cheap option just to see out the season, and it's almost like it will be a bonus if we get into the playoffs. From fans' points of view, I think a lot of them are just resigned to the fact that we probably won't even make the playoffs. I think a lot of fans were resigned a few games ago that's all we'll make. But now we probably won't even make the playoffs. So, and there are teams that, Cardiff, a lot of people were looking at certain managers like Nigel Pearson and certain names that were mentioned with the job. And people thought, oh no, we don't want that dinosaur and we don't want this guy. Well, like Mick McCarthy, he's a dinosaur. Wonders, isn't he? Yeah, and he's done wonders at Cardiff, and just with pure, discipline and desire and heart. Something that none of our players are showing. And
Neil Warnock at Middlesbrough as well.
Exactly. So a lot of our fans would not be overly sad if the bulk of the squad departed at the end of the season.
Blimey. I'll tell you what. Go on, Elliot.
I don't know if is this maybe an oversimplified way of looking at it, but is it that maybe the Bournemouth board don't know how to hire a manager properly because they've sort of coasted for so long with Eddie Howe? You sort of, I guess the scope changes of how you hire a manager in, say, 2010 and in 2021. Do you think maybe they've just forgotten how to hire a manager?
Yeah, 100% that. And I'm not even sure whether they knew how to anyway, because I mean, a lot of these people that have been involved with the club a long time. I mean, back even in the club's had a history of this, really. We haven't hired an experienced manager since Mel Machin back in 1995, because every appointment that we've had is internal. The only manager of experience that we hired is actually Eddie Howe when he came back from Burnley. But, it was a trusted name, so I don't even think you can include that. But, yeah, we haven't had a person with any experience for a long time. And now we've done exactly the same by hiring Woodgate. And you're probably right. They probably don't know how to. So I'm hoping the summer will provide them with a bit more time to actually make the right decision, because I think their excuse at the last time was, well, these are unique circumstances. There's a quick turnaround. Jason knows the players, will have the continuity, all that kind of stuff. But the continuity of a squad that got relegated from the Premier League, a squad that wasn't playing good football. And whilst Jason managed to win the Betway Cup, which was like a one-off friendly. Yes, we got some silverware in the cabinet, whatever. Apart from that, we had a few fairly decent results, but apart from that, we've been pretty poor. And so, the actual position of 7th masks how bad we've been, I think.
That is, I mean, I didn't think the change at Bournemouth is so dramatic that I can't get my head around it as an outsider anyway. But turning attention to Saturday, Sam, it seems like you're pretty disheartened going into it under Jonathan Woodgate, obviously on the back of 2 defeats against Cardiff and QPR. What can we expect from this Bournemouth side? Who have been the standouts at the moment? I know you're looking at it pretty negatively at the moment, but who have been the standout players that we need to look out for?
Okay, right. So I think Asmir Begovic in goal has been pretty solid on the whole. He's been excellent. We'll have Steve Cook back. Yes, he's been at the club for ages, but he is a rock at the back, and he's a player that we always look to for some defensive solidity. In midfield, we've got a number of options, and I don't know which way he'll play it tomorrow. But Ben Pearson, the lad from Preston,
I wanted him.
Yeah, you know what? He's a really good player, and he shows all those qualities that that we want. You know what? Of course, Dan Gosling. He's a player that he's got the energy and the drive, and maybe he's not got the technical ability anymore. But we sold him to a championship rival, and he's the kind of player that that we want. And I know at the time, Watford fans were saying, "Oh no, this is really bad. We've just signed Dan Gosling, a Bournemouth reject, and now they've gone and signed Ben Pearson. It's an amazing deal for them, and we've got the kind of short straw here." We don't know whether that's the case because Ben Pearson's barely even been fielded. He's persevered with a midfield like Jefferson Lerma, Jack Wilshere's not sort of pulled up any trees yet. Philip Billings, you very on and off, but Ben Pearson could provide something tomorrow. And Sam Surridge up front. It'll probably be him, maybe Shane Long, I don't know. But to be honest, mate, at the moment, it feels like all you need to do is turn up and you'll probably get a result. That's how bad it is.
Is it a thing of, because you've lost to QPR and Cardiff, and to be fair, if we look at it on a more optimistic side, they're both doing very well and they're both on pretty good streaks, and they're flying up the table. So is it all doom and gloom, or is there maybe a factor of you've played against 2 very confident, very informed teams, and now you're playing against Watford? There's a point to prove, and you could bring in someone like Ben Pearson, and Jack Wilshere could hit form. And is there a possibility of that?
That's what I'm hoping. I'm hoping we've got a point to prove, but we've had matches where players have had a point to prove all season long so far, and they haven't delivered. I'm just really hoping this is the one, because this is the time to really, sort of kickstart our season. I mean, when Woodgate came in, we played 4 at the back, and it was pretty good because Cameron Carter-Vickers was partnered with Lloyd Kelly at the back. Steve Cook was out, and we had a fairly good partnership. We didn't lose 4 games. We won 3 of them, one of which was Burnley in the FA Cup, and then all of a sudden he goes to 3 at the back against QPR. You're matching up against a team that are in the lower half of the table. And I know they've got some good results, but we got Premier League quality in our side, and you're breaking up a defensive duo that has looked really solid. So he goes to 3 at the back, and then the new player that comes in makes a mistake by, well, he absolutely gift wrapped that goal for QPR. And then we went 3 at the back again in the next game. We looked awful. I think if we have the same personnel and we almost need to reduce the group of players that we've got, then there's a chance for partnerships to create it, to actually be created on the pitch. If we go 4 at the back and, we have some of the players that we know are triers and will actually work hard, like Sam Surridge up front, there is a chance. I mean, I sound so pessimistic, but it's just, got to that stage recently where I can't see where any goals are going to be coming from. And it just, our marking against Cardiff City was absolutely dire. It's, if a draw, and I'd be ecstatic.
It does feel like a season-defining game, really, Sam, for us. Because we've obviously in great form at the moment. We've won 4 on the bounce. And with Bournemouth's form, it does feel like the only thing I'm worried about, Sam, if I'm completely honest, is with Bournemouth and Watford's, whatever you want to call it, rivalry, I don't know, whatever you want to call it, little tiffs, let's put it that way. Love story. It just feels like the one game we wouldn't want at this point in the form we want is an out-of-form Bournemouth, because you just feel like Bournemouth do turn up in these sort of games. Am I wrong to such thinking like that?
I think the Bournemouth that you're thinking of was like Eddie Howe's Bournemouth, but it's not the same anymore. Bournemouth, the identity of the club. I don't know what the identity of the club is, and it's sad, really, how one man could basically, see us do so well, and then we absolutely drop off the cliff. Yes, we did well to grab a late draw at Vicarage Road earlier in the season, and it sort of looked like we had that team spirit back then. But now, I think when you look at some of the players, they are doing interviews and they just look just like absolutely bereft. So, yeah, it could, all it needs is 90 minutes to maybe kickstart our season again, and we might be able to get in the playoffs, put a really good run together, and we might be challenging for the automatics. I doubt it. We're 11 points short at the moment, but it could be that game. And Watford, a bit of like rivalry. Perhaps it will happen. Probably won't, though.
I just feel like, though, that, you sound very much like you've, written off the season, rightly or wrongly. I've only really watched Bournemouth when you're on Sky. But, it's just mental in the Championship that you should keep in mind how quickly things can change. I was sat here 2 weeks ago going, automatics have gone. We're going to be fighting for playoffs, and now we're sat here 2 weeks later and we're firmly in the automatic promotion chase. So I think it's massive for you to get a result tomorrow, just, have that turning point, and who knows where, you'll be sat in a week's time, perhaps being comfortably in the playoffs again. It's just mental how quickly it can change.
Yeah, look, I'm sat here reacting after some of our poorest performances of the season. So I am probably doom and gloom, probably more than most at the moment. And you are right. The Championship can change so quickly. I mean, you've seen teams like Cardiff put 5 wins together in a row, and look where they are now. So, that is all it takes. But I just don't know whether the players want it enough. They're always putting out tweets like, "We go again," trust the process and all this kind of stuff. And it's just PR bullshit. It's like, hang on. What, why are you saying that? That can't be the player. It's got to be their management or something, because they just don't seem to understand the pressure cooker situation that we're in. And we're a size of club that I feel needs to go up at the first time of asking. Otherwise, I'm not sure we'll see it again, like top flight football. I don't know that for a fact. I don't know how long the owner's going to be around, but it does feel like it's like squeaky bum time already, and that's not a good position. In history, we've been good in adversity. Whether it'll happen again, I'm not so sure.
I'll tell you what, Sam, just to get your score predictions, because we've kept you for a little while, but thank you so much for coming on, mate. It's always a pleasure having you on. Score predictions for tomorrow. I'm going to guess it's not going to be those positive results for the viral getting.
Look, I'll be positive and say 1.
Okay, there we go.
And that's me being positive.
Nice. Sam, it's been a pleasure having you on. Make sure you do go and check out Back of the Net. They do some fantastic content. Even if you're a Watford fan, I've got a soft spot for Bournemouth because I go to Bournemouth University. Probably one of the few Watford fans that have a soft spot for Bournemouth. But make sure you go and check out the Back of the Net podcast. Do some fantastic stuff. And Sam, thank you so much for coming on, mate.
Cheers, guys. Thanks very much.
Take care, mate. See you later. Bye-bye.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Guys, what do you make of that? Interesting stuff from
Really,
Sam.
You know what?
On,
I was just shocked with. Could I just say a lot of parallels from, because what he was just saying now was a lot like what we were saying earlier on in the season, particularly after Coventry, and perhaps I don't want to say he was being pessimistic because it's an honest point of view from a fan, but I think, I mentioned it. I think kind of football fans now in general in the Championship have to be wary of how quickly things can change. With 3 games in the week in the Championship, it can, it can rapidly change and, get those results and it can, your season looks completely different. But I was just surprised with how downbeat it actually was. Like, it sounds like a proper mess in terms of the squad as well.
Elliot, for you, just kind of focusing on tomorrow, after hearing Sam and hearing the Bournemouth perspective and just getting an insight on the fans' mood with the club at the moment, does that encourage you more, or does that make you even more nervous? Because I have to admit, I mentioned it to Sam on that little segment where it's kind of like, if there was going to be one game where Bournemouth really do turn up recently, it would be against Watford.
Yeah, exactly that. It's actually worried me more hearing how dire the situation is at Bournemouth. And I don't think that's anything to do with Watford. I think this is completely taking Watford out of the situation. Just knowing that Bournemouth are in such a dire situation actually scares me more, because I just think that turning point's going to come. We had the turning point 3 weeks ago. I don't think we were quite in that state of affairs, but it can turn just like that. And I don't know if it necessarily would be tomorrow, but a win like that for Bournemouth against Watford, who there has been, I don't want to say a rivalry, but there has been a sort of rivalry in recent years.
Sure, for sure.
And so to get a win like that, a big win against a promotion rival as it could be, and start to push your way back up the table, start pressuring Reading and Cardiff, and then maybe even Watford. So it's a huge game for Bournemouth tomorrow. It's a big game for us, but I think it's even bigger for Bournemouth, and that's why it slightly worries me.
I'm just wondering, what's your favourite Watford against Bournemouth memory generally? Just home and away. My one's do you know what? Mine is it's a bit of a not out of the box one, because I know people just talk about the away games a lot, but something that's gone under the radar a lot is Troy's hat trick against them when we won 6-1, and Angela got a couple that day, and I think Lewis McGugan as well. And one of Troy's goals was an absolute banger as well.
The one outside the box where he kind of like turned someone.
Incredible, yeah. Nailed it, I think it was in the box, went outside the box and just smashed it in. It was prime Troy Deeney. That was fantastic.
I mean, we've had some bad memories as well. That Angela red card within about 30 seconds.
Yeah,
I remember being really hyped for that. I came home from school, ordered a Papa John's, and then I got in and Angela decided to get sent off 30 seconds in. So I was like, goodness me.
I think last season as well was mental last season, the 3-0 win.
Yeah, I think that was up there. I remember being in the away on that day, and the Nigel Pearson chant was on repeat. Elliot, Sam, actually, just to wrap it up today, we've said, I think someone made a WD18 bingo list, and it was about Sam. Sometimes what you're saying, it feels like a season-defining moment, but on a serious note, it does feel like another significant moment in our promotion season. What are your feelings going into tomorrow from a Watford point of view?
Sorry, yeah. I just sorry, my Wi-Fi cut out there. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah. All good.
Yeah. No, I'm nervous and excited. I feel like it's going to be a really difficult game. It's not going to be one that we can just turn up and win 5-6-0. I think they're going to be up for it as well, as bad as perhaps they have been of late. But I feel like, as I said earlier, if we play our way, then I feel like we can get a result. So I'm going to go. Yeah, I'm going to go 2-1 Watford.
2-1 Watford.
With last 10 minutes, every Watford fan having a heart attack again as normal.
Elliot, for you, how are you feeling going into tomorrow, mate?
Well, right now I feel nervous, but I've just sort of been mulling it over in my head, and I think actually it doesn't matter what I think because it doesn't affect the players. So if I just go into this feeling really, really confident,
mate, you're part of Cisco's team. It doesn't matter.
We have reason to be confident, and that's not always the case. We're the favourites going into it, and we're the favourites going into most games at the moment. So I think it doesn't hurt now to be confident, not arrogant, but confident. So we go into this game, we're expected to win. It's Bournemouth's game to now try and win. So I'm confident. I'm going to say 2-0.
2-0 Watford. That is the score. João Pedro, JP back on the score sheet.
JP.
Because that would make it 4 games on the bounce he scored. He's been on fire recently. Absolute fire.
Jacob, what's yours then? Go on.
Oh, I hate giving score predictions. I'm going to go with 3-1 Watford. Confident. 3-1 Watford. Yeah, I think we're going to do it tomorrow. The only thing is, away from home, we haven't been as good defensively as we have been at home. And I don't know. I always think away from home we look at maybe slightly leakier. Maybe
I wonder. I don't know if it'll make it. I don't know if it'll make a big difference. But in terms of away pitches, I'd say Bournemouth are probably one of the better ones. So that perhaps might suit us. I don't know. I think I think it's always an easy excuse to say that the pitch was difficult to play on. But I think it is pretty evident that the worse the pitch is, the worse that we play because we can't play the way that we want. So.
That's a great point. Yeah, very good point.
Perhaps that could play to our advantage tomorrow.
What Sam's not telling you guys is that he's actually part of Scott's team at Vicarage Road, putting the pictures together. He has the insight on
every day.
I'll tell you what, guys, that's where we're going to wrap it up. Thank you very much to everyone who watched tonight. Hope you enjoyed the new format, by the way, with we got to hear from William Shrewsbury Kong, we got to hear from Sam for the Back of the Net podcast and AFC Bournemouth YouTube channel. If you did enjoy, please do leave a like on the video. It's massively appreciated. Make sure you go and check out Sam and Elliot on their socials. We'll be back tomorrow at 5 p.m. Yes, 5 p.m. for a reaction to the Bournemouth game, hopefully after a Watford win, and we can make it 5 on the bounce. Thank you very much for watching. Take care, guys, and come on, you Hornets.